In the history of philosophy, Socrates has a place without parallel. On the one hand, he is revered as inaugurating the first great era of philosophy, and therefore, in a sense, philosophy itself. In textbooks, all previous thinkers are lumped together in textbooks as pre-Socratics, as if philosophy prior to his age was somehow prehistoric. On the other hand, Socrates left behind no writing, and there is hardly a single sentence ascribed to him that we can be sure was his own utterance rather than a literary creation of one of his admirers. Our first-hand acquaintance with his philosophy is less than with that of Xenophanes, Parmenides, Empedocles, or Democritus, yet his influence on subsequent philosophy down to our own day has been incomparably greater than theirs. In antiquity, many schools of thought claimed Socrates as a founder, and many individuals revered him as a paragon philosopher. In the Middle Ages, his history was not much studied, but his name appears on the page whenever a logician or metaphysician wishes to give an example. Socrates was to scholastic philosophers what John Doe long was to legal writers. In modern times, Socrates' life has been held up as a model by philosophers of many different kinds, especially by philosophers living under tyranny and risking persecution for refusal to conform to unreasoned ideology. Many thinkers have made their own the dictum that has as good a claim as any to be his own authentic utterance: the unexamined life is not worth living. The hard facts of Socrates' life do not take long to tell. He was born in Athens about 469 before Christ, 10 years after the Persian invasions of Greece had been crushed at the Battle of Plataea. He grew up during the years when Athens, a flourishing democracy under the statesman Pericles, exercised imperial hegemony over the Greek world. It was a golden age of art and literature, which saw the sculptures of Phidias and the building of the Parthenon, and in which Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides produced their great tragedies. At the same time, Herodotus, the father of history, wrote his accounts of the Persian Wars, and Anaxagoras introduced philosophy to Athens. The second half of Socrates' life was overshadowed by the Peloponnesian War, in which Athens was eventually forced to cede the leadership of Greece to victorious Sparta. During the first years of the war, he served in the heavy infantry, taking part in 3 major engagements. He acquired a reputation for conspicuous courage, shown particularly during the retreat after a disastrous defeat at Delium in 422. Back in Athens during the last years of the war, he held office in the city's assembly in 406. A group of commanders was tried for abandoning the bodies of the dead after a sea victory at Arginusae. It was unconstitutional to try the commanders collectively rather than individually, but Socrates was alone in voting against the illegality, and the accused were executed. In 404, after the war had ended, the Spartans replaced Athenian democracy with an oligarchy, the 30 Tyrants, long remembered for a reign of terror. Instructed to arrest an innocent man, Leon of Salamis, Socrates took no notice. He refused to accept illegal orders, but seems to have taken no part in the revolution that overthrew the oligarchy and restored democracy. His uprightness had by now given both democrats and aristocrats a grievance against him, and the restored democrats remembered also that some of his close associates, such as Critias and Charmides, had been among the 30. An aspiring Democrat politician, Anytus, with 2 associates, caused an indictment to be drawn up against Socrates in the following terms: Socrates has committed an offense by not recognizing the gods, whom the state recognizes, but introducing other new divinities. He has also committed the offense of corrupting the young. Penalty demanded: death. We have no record of the trial. though two of Socrates' admirers have left us imaginative reconstructions of his speech for the defense. Whatever he actually said failed to move a sufficient number of the 500 citizen jurors. He was found guilty, albeit by a small majority, and condemned to death. After a delay in prison due to a religious technicality, Socrates died in spring 399, accepting a poisonous cup of hemlock from the executioner. The allegation of impiety in the indictment of Socrates was not something new. In 423, the dramatist Aristophanes had produced a comedy, The Clouds, in which he introduces a character called Socrates, who runs a college of chicanery, which is also an institute of bogus research. Students at this establishment not only learn to make bad arguments trump good arguments, but also study astronomy in a spirit of irreverent skepticism about traditional religion. They invoke a new pantheon of elemental deities: air, ether, clouds, and chaos. The world, they are told, is governed not by Zeus, who does not exist, but by Dinos, literally vortex, the rotation of the heavenly bodies. Much of the play is burlesque that is obviously not meant to be taken seriously. Socrates measures how many feet a flea can leap, and explores the clouds in a ramshackle flying machine. But the allegation that astronomy was incompatible with piety, if it was a joke, was a dangerous one. After all, it was only in the previous decade that Anaxagoras had been banished for asserting that the sun was a fiery lump. At the end of the play, Socrates' house is burnt down by an angry crowd of people who wish to punish him for insulting the gods and violating the privacy of the moon. To those who recalled Aristophanes' comedy, the events of 399 must have seemed a sorry case of life imitating art. Some of Socrates' traits in The Clouds are attributed to him also by other more friendly writers. There is general agreement that he was pot-bellied and snub-nosed, pop-eyed and shambling in gait. He is regularly described as being shabby, wearing threadbare clothes, and liking to go barefoot. Even Aristophanes represents him as capable of great feats of endurance and indifferent to privation, never numb with cold, never hungry for breakfast, a spurner of wine and gluttony. From other sources, it appears that he was a spurner of wine, not in the sense of being a teetotaler, but as having an unusual ability to hold his liquor. Socrates married Xanthippe, with whom he had a son, Lamprocles. A stubborn but perhaps ill-founded tradition represents her as a shrew. According to some ancient writers, he had two other sons by an official concubine, Myrto. In antiquity, however, he was best known for his attachment to the flamboyant aristocrat Alcibiades, some 20 years his junior, an attachment which, though passionate, remained, in the terminology of a later age, platonic.